Joe Biden speaking. This isn't today's event, but let's just listen to it.
Closing out 20 years. We remain committed to ensuring that Afghanistan never again provides a base for terrorist attacks against the United States and our partners in our interest. Our European partners have also stood with us to counter ISIS. Just this week, NATO defense ministers endorsed significant expanded training and advisory mission in Iraq, which will be vital to the ongoing fight against ISIS. We cannot allow ISIS to reopen and regroup and threaten people in the Middle East, in Europe, in the United States, and elsewhere. And while the United States is undergoing a thorough review of our own force posture around the world, I've ordered the halting of withdrawal of American troops from Germany. I'm also lifting the cap imposed by the previous administration on the number of U.S. forces able to be based in Germany.
This doesn't sound good.
I know the past few years have strained and tested our transatlantic relationship. But the United States is determined to re-engage with Europe, to consult with you, to earn back our position of trusted leadership. Earlier today, as was referenced, I participated in the first meeting of the G7 leaders, where I spoke about the dire need to coordinate multilateral action to address COVID-19, the global economic crisis, and the accelerating climate crisis, and so much else. Achieving these goals is going to depend on a core strategic proposition, and that is the United States must renew America's enduring advantages so that we can meet today's challenges from a position of strength. That means building back better our economic foundations, reclaiming our place in international institutions, lifting up our values at home, and speaking out to defend them around the world. Modernizing our military capabilities while leading with diplomacy. Revitalizing America's network of alliances and partnerships that have made the world safer for all people. You know, I hope our fellow democracies are going to join us in this vital work. Our partnerships have endured and grown through the years because they are rooted in the richness of our shared democratic values. They're not transactional. They're not extractive. They're built on a vision of a future where every voice matters, where the rights of all are protected and the rule of law is upheld. None of this has fully succeeded in this. None of us has fully succeeded in this division. We continue to work toward it. And in so many places, including in Europe and the United States, democratic progress is under assault. I've known many of you for a long, long time, and you know that I speak my mind. So let me be very straightforward with you all. We are in the midst of a fundamental debate about the future and direction of our world. We're at an inflection point between those who argue that given all the challenges we face, from the fourth industrial revolution to the global pandemic, that autocracy is the best way forward, they argue. And those who understand that democracy is essential to meeting these challenges. Historians are going to examine and write about this moment as an inflection point, as I said. And I believe that every ounce of my being that democracy will and must prevail. We must demonstrate that democracy can still deliver for our people in this changed world. That, in my view, is our galvanizing mission. Democracy doesn't happen by accident. We have to defend it, fight for it, strengthen it, renew it. We have to prove that our model isn't a relic of history. It's the single best way to revitalize the promise of our future. And if we work together with our democratic partners with strength and confidence, I know we'll meet every challenge and outpace every challenger. You know, we must prepare together for long-term strategic competition with China. How the United States, Europe, and Asia work together to secure the peace and defend our shared values and advance our prosperity across the Pacific will be among the most consequential efforts we undertake. Competition with China is going to be stiff. That's what I expect, and that's what I welcome, because I believe in the global system Europe and the United States together with our allies in the Indo-Pacific worked so hard to build over the last 70 years. We can own the race for the future. But to do so, we have to be clear-eyed about the historic investments and partnerships that this will require. We have to protect for space for innovation, for intellectual property, and the creative genius that thrives with the free exchange of ideas in open democratic societies. We have to ensure that the benefits of growth are shared broadly and equitably, not just by a few. We have to push back against the Chinese government's economic abuses and coercion that undercut the foundations of the international economic system. Everyone must play by the same rules. U.S. and European companies are required to publicly disclose corporate governance structures and abide by rules to deter corruption and monopolistic practices. Chinese companies should be held to the same standard. We must shape the rules that will govern
A lot of toxic chat today.
Technology and the norms of behavior in cyberspace, artificial intelligence, biotechnology, so that they are used to lift people up, not used to pin them down. We must stand up for the democratic values that make it possible for us to accomplish any of this, pushing back against those who would monopolize and normalize repression. You know, this is also how we're going to be able to meet the threat from Russia. The Kremlin attacks our democracies and weaponizes corruption to try to undermine our system of governance. Russian leaders want people to think that our system is more corrupt or as corrupt as theirs. But the world knows that isn't true, including Russia's own citizens. Putin seeks to weaken the European project and our NATO alliance. He wants to undermine the transatlantic unity and our resolve, because it's so much easier for the Kremlin to bully and threaten individual states than it is to negotiate with a strong and closely united transatlantic community. That's why standing up for the sovereignty and territorial integrity of Ukraine remains a vital concern for Europe and the United States. That's why addressing Russian recklessness and hacking into computer networks in the United States and across Europe and the world has become critical to protecting our collective security. The challenges with Russia may be different than the ones with China, but they're just as real. It is not about pitting East against West. It's not about we want a conflict. We want a future where all nations are able to freely determine their own path without a threat of violence or coercion. We cannot and must not return to the reflective opposition and rigid blocks of the Cold War. Competition must not lock out cooperation on issues that affect us all. For example, we must cooperate if we're going to defeat COVID-19 everywhere. My first presidential national security memorandum focused on surging health and humanitarian responses to defeat COVID-19 and to better prevent and prepare for the next pandemic. Today, I'm announcing that the United States is making a $2 billion pledge to COVAX.
I did read that.
Promise of an additional $2 billion to urge others to step up as well. Yet even as we fight to get out of the teeth of this pandemic, the resurgence of Ebola in Africa is a stark reminder that we must simultaneously work to finally finance health security, strengthen global health systems, and create early warning systems to prevent, detect, and respond to future biological threats, because they will keep coming. We have to work together to strengthen and reform the World Health Organization. We need a UN system focused on biological threats that can move quickly to trigger action. Similarly, we can no longer delay or do the bare minimum to address climate change. This is a global existential crisis.
Tell that to Ted Cruz.
And we'll all suffer the consequences if we fail.
Cancun Cruz.
We have to rapidly accelerate our commitments to aggressively curb our emissions and to hold one another accountable for meeting our goals and increasing our ambitions. That's why, as president, I immediately rejoined the Paris Agreement. And as of today, the United States is officially, once again, a party to the Paris Agreement, which we helped put together. On Earth Day, I will host a Leaders Summit to help drive more ambitious actions among the top emitters, including domestic climate action here in the United States. I am grateful. I'm grateful for Europe's continued leadership on climate issues over the last 4 years. Together, we need to invest in the technological innovations that are going to power our clean energy futures and enable us to build clean energy solutions to global markets. The threat of nuclear proliferation also continues to require careful diplomacy and cooperation among us. We need transparency and communication to minimize the risk of strategic misunderstanding or mistakes. That's why the United States and Russia, notwithstanding other competition, extended the New START Treaty for an additional 4 years once I was sworn in. That's why we said we're prepared to re-engage in negotiations with the P5+1 on Iran's nuclear program. We must also address Iran's destabilizing activities across the Middle East. And we're going to work in close cooperation with our European and other partners as we proceed. We'll also work together to lock down fissile and radiological material to prevent terrorist groups from acquiring and using them. Look, the range of challenges Europe and the United States must take on together is broad and complex. And I'm eager to hear next from my good friends and outstanding leaders, Chancellor Merkel, about her thoughts on the way forward together. So let me conclude with this. We cannot allow self-doubt to hinder our ability to engage each other or the larger world.
Right.
The last 4 years have been hard, but Europe and the United States have to lead with confidence once more, with faith in our capacities, a commitment to our own renewal, with trust in one another, and the ability of Europe and the United States to meet any challenge to secure our futures together. I know we can do this. We've done it before. Just yesterday, after a 7-month, 300 million mile journey, NASA successfully landed the Perseverance rover on Mars.
Huge.
It's on a mission of exploration with elements contributed by our European partners to seek evidence of the possibility of life beyond our planet and the mysteries of the universe. Over the next few years, Percy, as it's been called, but Perseverance, will range and collect samples from the red planet and pile them up. So another mission and rover, envisioned as a joint effort between NASA and the European Space Agency, will retrieve this trove of scientific wonders and bring it home to all of us.
Can you imagine?
That's what we can do together. If our unbound capacities to carry us to Mars and back don't tell us anything else, they tell us we can meet any challenge we can face on Earth. We have everything we need. And I want you to know the United States will do our part. We'll stand with you. We'll fight for our shared values. We'll meet the challenges of this new moment in history. America's back. So let's get together and demonstrate to our great-great-grandchildren when they read about us that democracy functions and works, and together there's nothing we can't do. So let's get working. Thank you all very much.
So I wasn't actually planning on covering this. Really, what we're here for is the press briefing scheduled for 10 minutes from now. COVID-19 update's going to be very, very interesting. But this is Joe Biden's presentation remotely. He's doing it cyberly today for the Munich Security Conference, and very interesting. So that is over. This stream has concluded, and we are going to be hearing from Dr. Fauci very, very soon. And I think that's a great thing. We'll go over COVID numbers momentarily. I do want to thank 6 people who grabbed Twitch subs while President Biden was speaking. And I also want to say a big thank you to Rodolfo Sanchez and Jason Murray signing up at joinpacman.com and supporting the stream today. Very, very exciting stuff. All right, let's get to some of these super chats that came in. Isaiah says, website says human error. Must be the coupon code. I don't know. Chakaseki says, I'm amazed at the universal condemnation of Flyin' Ted after his shameful lies and changing narrative. Can his humiliation get any worse? Knowing Fled Cruz's luck, it will. Yes, I think that this isn't the bottom for Cancun Cruz. David, I laughed so hard when you powerfully timed the YMCA song at the inauguration and still do every time. Keep up the good work. Thank you. Have I seen my rating on WikiFeet? The proletariat wants to know. I'm told it's one of the highest ratings ever seen on WikiFeet. I'm told my feet have scored very, very strongly on WikiFeet. That's my belief. So the Vatican vaccine mandate, LOL. Yeah, I actually have, I tweeted about this morning. That kooky Trumpist, Madison Cawthorn, who's a member of Congress, look at what he tweeted. So here's the story. Vatican employees who refuse to get the COVID-19 vaccine will be fired. Now, Vatican is, of course, an independent territory within Italy. It is sort of like a country. It has nothing to do with American law. And Madison Cawthorn says, this doesn't sound legal. I didn't know he was an expert on Vatican law. I thought his specialty was podiatry. This doesn't sound legal. One shouldn't be forced against their will to be vaccinated. The vaccination is there for those who want it or are in need of it due to medical vulnerabilities. Dude, it's a different country. What are you even talking about? It's just shocking. And he's a lawmaker in the United States. Oh, God. Not this again. All right, let me mute that. Oh, man, not that again. Anyway, okay, so that's that, and we're standing by for the press briefing. Very good. So that's Madison Cawthorn. By the way, thanks for the perfect stream, Davids. The YouTube experts all agree. Thank you. Marianne says, David, we cannot begin to understand how much Biden's words, an attack on one is an attack on all, mean to Estonia, Latvia, and Lithuania. Today, free countries, but they are still being bullied by Russia. Yes, and I saw that firsthand when I visited Estonia not long ago. Al says, wake up, Sleepy Joe. Paul sent $20 and retracted his message. And Scott says, I just spent a fortune on getting alfajores, both Havana and handmade ones shipped. They better be strong and outstanding or I'll be mad. They will be. They will be. Don't worry about it. Okay, listen. At this point, it's time for the doom and gloom, FUD, fear, uncertainty, and doubt on COVID to stop. The correct approach now is cautious optimism. The vaccines are pretty good against the variants. They're being distributed increasingly quickly. Case numbers are collapsing, down 71% on average over the last since the 12th, I guess in about the last 5 weeks. These are really good numbers. Deaths, while still tragically high, are down more than 30% on average now. The vaccine rollout continues. We are now averaging 1.6 million doses a day, and that will continue climbing. We're about to get the approval of the Johnson & Johnson vaccine. I'll be going for my second dose Friday. Things are improving, okay? And while it is still insane that we are losing 2,500 people a day, the path is the correct one, and I will soon be in Cancun, if you can imagine that. No, that's a joke. That's not for real. No, but things are improving dramatically, and we are let's just let the data guide us. Let's continue being safe. Let's continue doing all the right things. The Israeli data tells us that these vaccines really are incredible. Okay. All right. Let's do the requisite poll. Do people want me to do a Troy York voicemail today? He hates the show but calls in every day. I'm pasting the poll in Twitch. I'm also going to paste the poll in YouTube. You can start voting now. The first time we did this, it was 2/3 in favor of Troy York voicemails. The second time we did this, it was only 53-47 in favor of Troy York voicemails. So this could be reduced dramatically. We might actually get a no today. With the first 100 votes, 60-40 in favor. 60-40 in favor, with only 100 votes in so far, but these can keep coming in. 59% in favor after 200 votes. This is democracy, folks. This is democracy. In the meantime, I'll read a few other super chats. On top of all that's wrong with Cancun cruise, he left his dog under freezing temperatures while vaccinating. Vile, repulsive, and completely sick. Yeah, and I read his dog's name is Snowflake. Chakaseki says, got my second dose. Prepare for some mild fever, chills, and myalgia. Tylenol and hydration are your friends. Yeah, listen, Chakaseki really needed the vaccines because he's a radiologist, so he can sit at home and look at his computer screen. That's very, very high risk. That's a joke. Every medical professional should get it. Everybody should get it. We love Chakaseki. Thanks to Stacy Martin for subscribing at joinpacman.com. With 400 votes counted, 59% want the Troy York voicemail. Let's do it since we are short on time today because the press briefing starts soon. Here is the latest Troy York voicemail. Oh, sorry, guys. I had it muted. Let me unmute. Here we go.
Again, I didn't appreciate what you said about Rush Limbaugh. You know,
when I said I don't take pleasure in anybody's illness or death, that's what you didn't appreciate.
You call him a right-wing radical. Well, you know what? Some people would call you an extremist left-wing radical. So what?
People have taken to calling the voicemail number whenever I play a voicemail. And even though I don't have Do Not Disturb on, that's going to ruin the voicemail segment if people are going to start calling in every time. There it is again. I'm going to have to figure out how to turn that off because I have Do Not Disturb on. I don't know that there's any other. Yeah. Let's see. Always use. Okay. Turn on the devices. Oh, here's a setting. Got it. I just found the setting. Beautiful. Beautiful, beautiful, beautiful. We fixed it. Okay. Unmute, and let's continue.
Act that Rush Limbaugh had for this nation and talk radio and the industry was out of this world. It was historical, groundbreaking. You know, you weren't alive, or you might have been in Argentina or Venezuela, or
I've never been to Venezuela.
Israel, when Rush Limbaugh made it big. So maybe you don't quite have an understanding of the impact, the importance of Rush Limbaugh and the.
Oh, I know the importance. He participated in the dramatic radicalization of the airwaves.
What he did for your industry. I mean, for someone who's on the radio, you may not agree with his politics, but you're just a partisan hack. If you think that there's something wrong with it.
Listen, Rush Limbaugh did a segment where he would celebrate the death of AIDS victims. There's no equivalent that I'm doing on this show. Rush Limbaugh gleefully celebrated the death of Ruth Bader Ginsburg. There's no left-wing equivalent that I'm doing on this show.
And it wasn't a great moment that Trump gave Rush Limbaugh the Medal of Honor. Then you're just a left-wing communist socialist hack.
Right. Okay. Anyway, so there's the Troy York voicemail, not making any relevant points. Here's an interesting super chat. from Vincenzo Dukes, who says, my parents are under the impression COVID cases are going down because previous testing sites are now vaccine sites. Is this even possible? No, that's a false thing that's spreading. One of the important things to look at is the positivity rate on tests. If testing was being canceled, you would see people who are disproportionately sicker be tested and the positivity rate would go up. But fortunately, the positivity rate is actually going down. So no, we really are seeing fewer cases in the United States. That's a good thing. All right. Very, very important to know that. Okay. So we've gotten that out of the way. I had a couple of other things. Oh, yeah. People asking about Repeater. Repeater hasn't called in for a long time. Let me see here. Let me see if I have anything from Repeater. No, doesn't look like it. Yeah, we haven't heard from Repeater for a while. Repeater is the guy who just repeated the exact same voicemail dozens of times in a row. Nothing from him at all. Okay. Thank you to Tlago Mars, Ellis, Gordon Z. Hall, and a bunch of other people. 10 Twitch subs just dropped right in, putting us at 19 today. We are standing by for a coronavirus press briefing from the White House, and I'm very much looking forward to hearing about vaccine insights, variants, and a number of other things. As I was mentioning, the Israeli data is giving us incredible insight into the power of these vaccines. Study in Israel shows Pfizer vaccine 85% effective after first dose. Now, of course, get your second doses. The protocol right now is 2 doses. But what is very interesting is that the more we learn about the vaccines, the more we realize you could be vaccinating twice as many people and spreading out that second dose until there's more supply in 2 months, 3 months. This is not me saying do any of this. It's just the data is starting to point in this direction. The FDA approved protocol is you get 2 doses, 21 days apart with Pfizer, 28 days apart with Moderna. I'm not suggesting anyone do anything different. It's just an idea now, because if indeed the difference between 1 and 2 doses is 85 to 95% protection, you could even more quickly roll out first doses. But this is something the FDA is going to look at. Absolutely incredible numbers that we are seeing here. Overall infections, including asymptomatic, reduced by 75%. Of course, I appreciate that public health experts are being cautious and saying, we don't yet know if the vaccine reduces transmission, but it's logical to expect that the vaccines would reduce transmission, and early data that has not yet been peer reviewed and published, I'm being careful here, points in that direction. And that is all extraordinarily good news. All right. Okay. Here we go.
Thank you for joining our COVID-19 response briefing. First, I want to start by saying that our hearts go out to the people in Texas, Louisiana, and across the country who've been impacted by the severe weather this week. Now, I want to give an update on how severe weather across the country has impacted vaccine deliveries and administration.
It has.
And how we intend to catch up.
Right here.
As of now, we have a backlog of about 6 million doses due to the weather. All 50 states have been impacted. The 6 million doses represents about 3 days of delayed shipping. And many states have been able to cover some of this delay with existing inventory. Mm-hmm. So let me first walk you through the situation and then tell you how we, as an entire nation, will have to pull together to get back on track. There are 3 places along the distribution chain that have been impacted by the weather. First, FedEx, UPS, and McKesson, our logistics and distribution teams, have all faced challenges as workers have been snowed in and unable to get to work to package and ship the vaccines, kits, and the required diluent. Second, road closures have held up delivery of vaccines at different points in the distribution process.
Right.
Between manufacturing sites to distribution and to shipping hubs. Third, more than 2,000 vaccine sites are located in areas with power outages, so they're currently unable to receive doses.
Triple whammy.
General Perna's guidance to the team was to ensure safety of personnel, preservation of the vaccines and supplies, and constant communication with the states. Because of 72-hour cold chain constraints, we don't want to ship doses to those locations and have them sitting at a site where they might expire. So the vaccines are sitting safe and sound in our factories and hubs, ready to be shipped out as soon as the weather allows. Now, as weather conditions improve, we're already working to clear this backlog. 1.4 million doses are already in transit today, and we anticipate that all the backlog doses will be delivered within the next week, with most being delivered within the next several days. And we expect we will be able to manage both this backlog and the new production coming online next week.
Beautiful.
With everybody's hard work and collective effort, we will be able to catch up, but we understand this will mean asking more of people. UPS and FedEx both will support Saturday deliveries tomorrow.
Nice.
We are working with the jurisdictions to see which ones are able to take Saturday deliveries. The packaging plant for Moderna vaccines is just now coming online. Roads are being cleared for the workforce to leave their homes. They are working today through Sunday to package the backlogged orders and will put the vaccines and ancillary supplies on aircraft on Sunday night for Monday through Wednesday delivery. As we get back on track, we're asking states, sites, and vaccinators to help us catch up and to get Americans vaccinated. We know many Americans are awaiting their second dose, and many more their first dose. We're asking vaccine administration sites to extend their hours
Exactly.
even further
I was going to say, go 24 hours.
and offer additional appointments and to try to reschedule their vaccinations over the coming days and weeks
Right.
as significantly more supply arrives. States and vaccination sites are going to want to be prepared for the additional volume. Whatever reduction we see in our 7-day average this week in vaccinations from the weather, if we all work together, from the factory all the way to the vaccinators, we will make up for it in the coming weeks. I want to personally thank the men and women who've continued to keep our operations up and running throughout this storm and have been working 24/7 with the states and with local vaccination sites. And my thoughts remain with all of those impacted. I'll be happy to answer any questions about this topic. But before we turn it over to Dr. Walensky and Dr. Fauci, I do want to briefly touch on our work to stand up more federally run sites.
Right.
Even as we manage the weather on the one hand, we are pushing ahead with plans to get more vaccines to more places to get more Americans vaccinated. Today, I'm pleased to announce we'll be opening 5 additional vaccination centers, 1 in Pennsylvania and 4 in Florida. In Florida,
There's an
we will
emergency in
stand up
Florida.
4 major new community vaccination centers in partnerships with the state in Orlando, Miami, Jacksonville, and Tampa. These sites will have the capacity to vaccinate a total of 12,000 individuals per day in total. In Pennsylvania, we're announcing a major new community vaccination center at the Pennsylvania Convention Center in Philadelphia. This site will have the capacity to deliver 6,000 doses per day. Selection of all of these sites is based on a CDC FEMA framework that has been developed to target vaccinations to those who are most vulnerable. The goal is to launch vaccination sites that use processes and are in locations that promote equity and deploy the CDC's Social Vulnerability Index. The federal government will be deploying teams immediately to work hand in hand with state and local jurisdictions to get these sites set up. And we expect them all to be up and running in the next 2 weeks. So that's a brief status from the White House COVID response team. Here, we'll have more announcements to come next week. Now, with that, I will turn it over to Dr. Walensky to overview a state of the pandemic and public
Beautiful.
health.
This is
Dr.
what we
Walensky.
need. Data.
Thank you so much. I'm delighted to be back with you today. I have new information to share from CDC regarding ongoing safety monitoring of the COVID-19 vaccines. But before I go into those findings, I want to provide a brief overview of the latest data on the pandemic.
Let's do it.
We continue to see a 5-week decline in COVID cases, with cases decreasing 69% in the 7-day average since hitting a peak on January 11th.
I said 71.
The current 7-day average of approximately 77,000 cases is the lowest reported since the end of October, but still higher than the height of last summer's peak. Like new COVID-19 cases, the number of new hospital admissions continues to drop. The 7-day average of new admissions on February 16th, approximately 7,200, represents a 56% decline since the January 9th peak. As I reported on Wednesday, the number of deaths continues to fluctuate. The latest data indicate that deaths have declined modestly in the past week to an average of approximately 2,700 per day.
Horrible still.
These numbers are a stark reminder of the thousands of lives lost to this pandemic. Another reminder of the devastating impact of the pandemic has had on our country was brought into clear view yesterday in a report released by the CDC on the provisional life expectancy in the first half of 2020. The report found that life expectancy was at its lowest level in 15 years, dropping by a full year compared to the life expectancy in 2019. This represents a substantial decline in life expectancy in our nation. Importantly, like the populations most heavily affected by this pandemic, the declines in life expectancy were again most pronounced in certain racial and ethnic minority groups. The largest declines in life expectancy occurred in non-Hispanic Black persons, dropping 2.7 years, levels not seen since 2001. And Hispanic persons had lost the second largest life expectancy, dropping 1.9 years. These findings, though not surprising, are sobering and representative of the continued need to take this pandemic and actions to stop the spread of COVID-19 seriously.
That's insane data.
Now, more than ever, with continued spread of variants that stand to threaten the progress we are making, we must recommit to doing our part to protect one another. Wear a well-fitting mask, social distance, avoid travel in crowds, practice good hand hygiene, and get vaccinated when the vaccine is available to you. I also want to spend a moment talking about vaccine safety. To date, more than 41 million people in the United States have received at least one dose of the COVID-19 vaccine. But we continue to hear that people might be reluctant to roll up their sleeve because they are worried about adverse effects. I will reiterate, the CDC is committed to monitoring vaccine safety and frequently reporting on what we know. Today, CDC is releasing a study in the Morbidity and Mortality Weekly Report that describes findings from our COVID-19 vaccine safety monitoring in the United States from December 14th through January 13th, 2021. During the first month of vaccinations, approximately 1.6 million people enrolled in vSafe, CDC's new phone-based COVID-19 vaccine safety monitoring system.
I'm on that.
Among those enrolled, 71% reported pain where the shot was given, 34% reported fatigue, and 30% reported a headache. These are common with most vaccines, and they typically resolve within a day or two of vaccination. It's important to know that about half the people don't feel very well after getting their second dose. This should not deter you from getting your second dose, but you need to have a light day of activity after getting vaccinated.
I have nothing planned.
There were also rare reports of severe allergic reactions, like anaphylaxis, a serious but treatable reaction. In fact, there were 4.5 cases of anaphylaxis per 1 million doses given during this time, a rate similar to what we have seen in other commonly used vaccines. In the first month of experience, a total of 113 deaths were reported, of which approximately 65% were among long-term care facility residents. A thorough review of the available data indicated that these deaths were not related to the COVID-19 vaccine.
Right.
And the death rate in this population, though truly sad and unfortunate, was consistent with the expected background death rate in this demographic.
Key point.
I want to emphasize that we have implemented the most comprehensive vaccine safety monitoring system program in our history. And the data released from the CDC today are reflective of this effort. We will continue to closely monitor these events and report back as further data emerge. I want to be sure that you know the facts and not the myths about the vaccine safety. The fact is they are safe and they will save lives. And that is why we are committed to working with state and local public health partners, as well as partners in the private sector, to support getting people vaccinated as quickly and as safely as possible. To help advance our collective efforts to scale up vaccines in communities, on Monday, CDC is convening a 3-day virtual national forum on COVID-19 vaccine. The forum will bring together a broad range of governmental and non-governmental partners to share information and best practices on how to build trust and confidence in COVID-19 vaccines, how to use data to optimize vaccine implementation, and how to provide practical real-world experience on how to increase vaccination capacity in communities, especially for those at increased risk of COVID-19 and for those who may face barriers to vaccination. I'm excited about this forum and the rich dialogue it will stimulate, and I invite those who are involved in vaccine efforts to register and attend this important meeting. Thank you. As always, I look forward to your questions, but before that, I'll turn it over to Dr. Fauci. Dr.
Indeed.
Fauci.
Thank you very much, Dr. Walensky. What I'd like to do is to just take a couple of minutes, very briefly reviewing the status of the vaccines and vaccine trials that we have, but then to, as I've done in the past, pick out a question that I believe is being asked more frequently to try and preemptively address it and perhaps generate some discussion. With regard to the trials that we have, as you know, the US government had been involved in the development of and/or facilitation of the testing of 3 separate platforms represented by 6 different companies. You're all aware of the data of the Moderna and the Pfizer-BioNTech, which have their EUA now, having shown a 94 to 95% efficacy.
Wow.
Right now, as we speak, the data from the Janssen study, which, as you know, showed a 72% efficacy in the United States, but was also done in South Africa and Latin America, and showed a diminished efficacy against the variant, but very good against severe disease. That is being reviewed at the FDA for the US data. And on February the 26th, the FDA will consult with their independent advisory committee, their VRPAC, and we should be hearing from them soon.
Oh, that's great.
With regard to the AstraZeneca and the Novavax, those trials are both fully enrolled. These are event-driven decisions. So when they reach a certain amount of events, they will then look at the data and make decisions as to whether or not to go ahead with a request for an EUA. So having said that, let me just now very briefly address a question that is a very relevant question that we are now more commonly being asked. If you look at the existing trials, those have already gotten an EUA, and those that we anticipate and hope will get an EUA, when will we be able to say we can vaccinate children?
Right.
Children in the high school range and children in the elementary school range.
Beautiful.
You know from Pfizer that they started off with the trial of 44,000 individuals down to 16-year-olds and then progressed it down to 12-year-olds. So what they're going to be doing in April, starting in April, they are going to be studying 12-year-olds down to 5 to 6-year-old.
Nice.
That will take likely 1 year to get the information on that, likely not until the first quarter. However, we anticipate data on high school age individuals, namely individuals 12 years old to 17 years old, by the beginning of the fall. Maybe not exactly coinciding with the first day of school, but sometime in the fall, we will have that. Moderna, as you know, started off with already 18-year-old. They are now currently enrolling 12 to 17-year-olds. So let me take a moment to explain the process of how you get relevant information regarding these younger individuals.
This is good.
This is a representative trial, which very likely will reflect other trials. It's a 3,000 person trial. So right off, you're not dealing with the 30,000 and 44,000 person trial that gave the efficacy signal in the original Moderna and Pfizer study. What the trial is what's called a non-inferiority by immunogenicity, which is a lot of big words to really mean what they're asking. Is it safe in the children? And does it induce an immune response that's comparable or not inferior to the immune response that we know is associated with efficacy in the other trials?
Right.
And that's the way that trial will go. And then we're starting by the end of March, they will do what's called an age de-escalation study. We're already enrolling on the 12 to 17. They will go to the 6 to 12, then 2 to 6, then 6 months to 2 years. Again, we will likely get information for high schoolers at some time in the fall, but it is, I would say, more than unlikely we will not have data on elementary school children until at least the first quarter of 2022. Similar types of approaches are being taken by the other candidates, the other companies, namely J&J, Novavax, and AZ. So the bottom line of all of this is as follows. It is highly likely that sometime in the fall, we will have data that will give us the capability of saying the safety and comparable efficacy in children 12 to 17, 18 years old. Again, the final decisions we always leave to the FDA. I'm trying to give you a roadmap of what likely will happen. But then also with the studies that I just mentioned, to getting the information to make the decision in elementary school children almost certainly will not be firmed down until the first quarter of 2022.
It is what it
I'll
is.
stop there and hand it back to Andy.
Thank you, Dr. Fauci. Okay, we can take some questions.
All right, first up, we will have Jonathan Cohen at Huffington Post.
Thanks for taking the question. I have a question about the federal mass vaccination sites and how you're deciding where to do them and setting them up. How much of this is states coming to you and saying, okay, you know, we need help with this place or that place. Can you come in and set up a FEMA site? How much is this you going to the states and saying, hey, it looks like you need some help here, or we see that, you know, the progress, you know, you're not hitting enough of the underserved communities, so we want to do a site here. And in general, has there been a kind of overall 50-state assessment of how the states are doing at distribution and where they need help? Have you done something like that? Some kind of comprehensive look?
Yeah, thanks, Jonathan. And I may ask Dr. Walensky to comment in a second on how the CDC thinks about the social vulnerability index and places where we like to target. What I would reflect for you, Jonathan, is we have a very healthy ongoing dialogue with multiple participants in a state every week, and there is a good give and take. We are obviously looking for two things as we select these sites. The first is how can we get more people vaccinated more quickly? And the second is how can we get more people vaccinated more equitably? Those are really the two most important criteria. And so having these conversations, these dialogues go back and forth. We, you know, to give, you know, as an illustration, we may have a governor says, we're very interested in this. And then when we work with the CDC and with FEMA, we may say, if we do something in this state, this is the location that we think works best and makes sense. And then we'll have a back and forth. So it's very collaborative. It's very positive. Dr. Walensky, anything you want to add more specifically?
I don't have a whole lot to add to that, except to say that really it is a collaborative. We are doing outreach and we are actually receiving. We're trying to incorporate what states' specific needs are. We do look specifically at the social vulnerability index of where these sites might go. Also the population size, so we can understand exactly what the needs are in those specific sites. So it's a deep collaboration, and it looks both at social vulnerability index, the outreach that's needed, whether there's, the size, as well as what mobile units might be needed as well.
Yeah, Jonathan, federal-state partnership to us is the key and is the approach, and we view ourselves hopefully as good partners to the states. And if they bring us challenges, our goal is to help them solve them, not to reward or punish, as I think has been a prior philosophy. Let's go to the next question.
Prior philosophy.
Next, we'll go to Cheyenne Haslett at ABC News.
Hi, thanks for doing this. Thanks. On school openings, my question is about 75% of schools that are currently located in the red zones, which the CDC guidelines recommend be hybrid or virtual. So I'm wondering how in April, just about 2 months from now, the president intends to make good on that promise of full-time in-person schooling.
Thanks for that question. I think that question actually allows us to clarify a few things, and I'm going to turn to Dr. Walensky to do that.
Yeah, thank you for that question. The first thing I just want to convey is there are opportunities for in-person learning at all stages of all states of community spread. As we've seen community spread coming down and as we've seen our numbers improving right now, what I would invite the schools to do, we have actually seen many more communities leave the red zone and move into the orange zone, which actually has more opportunities for in-school opening and for in-person learning. So our numbers are coming down. I would actually invite schools to lean in and to look at what is needed so that in the roadmap to try and get more and more children back to school.
And I want to just to clarify something you said, and because it's so important, Dr. Walensky, is it possible if you are in the red zone, even if things are improving, is it possible to open schools under the CDC's guidance?
Absolutely. So in the areas that remain red, and there are about 2/3 of districts now, although the numbers continue to decline, in the numbers that remain red, we say with universal masking and physical distancing and de-densification of classrooms, there are opportunities for in-person learning, as well as for middle and high school learning, and assuming you're able to do the de-densification that we suggest.
Great. I think that's a really important clarification. Next question, please.
Next, we'll go to Brenda Goodman at WebMD.
Hi. I have a question about dosing. There have been several studies published in the last couple of days, the dosing of the vaccines, that is, that have suggested that just a single dose of the vaccine might be highly effective after about 2 or 3 weeks. And I wondered if that had shifted, Dr. Fauci, if it had convinced you that just a single dose of the mRNA vaccines might end up being effective.
Well, if you're referring to the mRNA vaccine, you're probably referring to a recent Israeli study that looked at the mRNA, because the extension of the time in a single dose with AZ has also been discussed. But let me refer and just answer directly your question with the mRNA. We always look at data very carefully and very seriously, and we evaluate it as it evolves. But if you look at the data from the particular study and then go back and look at why we wound up with a prime and a boost, and for Moderna, as you know, that's 28 days, and for Pfizer, it's 21 days. And the reason is, even though you can get a fair degree of, quote, protection after a single dose, it clearly is not durable. We know that. The durability is not as much as the durability that you would get with the boost. Secondly, if you look at the difference between the degree, the intensity of the response after a first dose and compare it to that of the second dose, the second dose is 10 times higher in the sense of level of neutralizing antibodies, which is one of the parameters of immunity.
Wow.
So again, although the numbers of a single dose do look interesting, the one thing we don't know is how durable it is. And since it's 10 times less than the optimal dose that you would get, you have to look at it from two standpoints. You remember we discussed on one of these press briefings before that the reason why you look clinically and see that despite the fact that there is a maybe 5 to 6-fold diminution in the impact of the antibodies that are induced by the mRNA candidates, it still is within the range of protection. The reason for that is that the response following the boost was so high that even though you diminished the efficacy down to about 50%, you still had rather good efficacy against severe disease.
Yeah, this is a good point. If you just assign numbers, and we're not missing anything because we're paused, if you need a level of 500 to be protected against serious disease to the South African variant, and normally the vaccine would give you 1,200 against the main variant and only 600 against the South African, for most people it would still be enough to prevent severe disease.
So it's a variant issue to protect against variant. The other issue that we need to take into consideration is if you do have a less than optimal, even though with numbers they look reasonably good, but not as good as the optimal response, what could happen theoretically is that because of the immunological pressure that you see on the virus, you might actually theoretically be inducing more variants.
Yeah, you don't want that.
So there are a few scientific reasons why we feel, given the information we have right now, we will stick with the scientifically documented efficacy and optimal response of a prime followed by a boost with the mRNA.
Dr. Fauci, just a couple additional clarifications. You said something here which is important for, I think, the public to understand. If we do see more of the variant present in this country, do you feel better with people having 2 doses of these mRNA vaccine or 1?
Oh, there's
Obviously,
no doubt, Andy. Thank you for the question. I alluded to it, but thank you for giving me the opportunity to repeat it. There's no doubt about that you have an optimal response. When you're dealing with variants, you want enough of a height of a response that even if you diminish it, you don't diminish it so much to get out of the realm of protection.
Right.
Number one. Number two, if you do have a less than optimum response, you could theoretically and inadvertently be selecting immunologically for variants.
Right.
Thank you. So just a couple of things to emphasize here. One is we want the public not to be confused. The recommendation from the FDA is 2 doses, just as it always has been. Number 2, and I think this is a sort of more macro point, and I invite either Dr. Fauci or Dr. Walensky to comment here. There are studies all the time. There are preprints all the time. There are real-world evidence comes out all the time, and it will continue to happen. The people at the FDA, led by Peter Marks, people like Dr. Fauci, people like Dr. Walensky, love looking at this data, love looking at these studies. But it's also important to understand that one study, even though it may look attractive if it's in the public domain and may capture a headline, isn't always what it appears to be, and it is only one study. So I think we've got the best people in the world looking at this. I feel very confident, and they'll look aggressively at these studies. But I think it's important that people understand that we're not going to be persuaded by one study that happens to grab headlines. We here at the White House will, of course, listen to whatever the scientists have to say and adjust accordingly. But anything you want to add to that, Dr. Walensky or Fauci?
Yeah, Andy, thank you for bringing that up. And with regard to the specific study, and again, I'm not criticizing the study because it's an interesting study and we really do want to follow up on this. But again, this is a study that we were made aware of by press release. So it wasn't something that we had the opportunity to look at all the data yet. But it's very interesting that it says here at the end, the results might differ from others, getting to the point that Andy made. There are many studies. The results might differ from others because the subjects were largely younger and healthier, said one of the authors. She also said the study couldn't confirm how long the protection from one shot would last, as most of the subjects received a second shot.
Right.
So the points that I made in my explanation to the person who questioned is actually admitted to by one of the authors. Thank you.
Beautiful.
Thank you. Next question, please.
All right, we have time for one more question. Last, we'll go to Yamiche Alcindor at PBS.
Yamiche.
Hi, thanks so much for taking my question. I have two questions. The first is a lack of pharmacies and hospitals, providers, and transportation has emerged as a significant concern in the communities hardest hit by the virus. What's the plan and the timeline for getting more vaccination sites for areas with inadequate health infrastructure? Has the government found that that's a problem, an increasing problem when looking at vaccine distribution? And the second question I have is on life expectancy. I'm wondering how lasting this change in life expectancy is. Do we expect it to bounce back? Will it go to, and what will it take, if at all, for it to go back up?
Well, let me take the first question, and Dr. Walensky, you can maybe get the second question on life expectancy. There are a number of issues that you point out that are access barriers, including transportation, including the clinical infrastructure, and then including, I think it's important to point out that even when there is a local availability of vaccines, people from outside of these communities, outside of the hard-hit communities, come in, make appointments, and often take some of those doses, which we shouldn't be surprised about. It happens in a shortage, but we have to act on it because we are purposely setting up both sites that are located conveniently in these communities. There will be a series of announcements over the next, call it week to 10 days, about some major things that we're doing about transportation, about appointment reservations and ensuring that those appointments are kept. Certainly bringing mobile vans into the communities, bringing federally qualified health centers, which are ideally located into communities, and then assuring that we have all of the things that end up becoming barriers, which are the hours people are open, the ability to get there and back, and some of the other things that
that's important. As there are more vaccines distributed, if you don't increase the number of sites dramatically, you're going to have to think about running places, 6 a.m. to midnight?
Are getting in the way. So I can tell you that we are working these in detail along with the states, along with local communities. They are, I think it's safe to say that if you don't do these things, you naturally end up with the people who are getting hit hardest by the virus also getting the least access to the vaccine. There are some success stories. I think it's too early to report that we've figured this out. I think it's a constant battle, to be honest. Dr. Walensky, anything you want to either add to that and, of course, the life expectancy question?
Great. Maybe I'll just move to the life expectancy question. I agree with you entirely, Andy. The report from CDC really only reported the life expectancy lost from January to June, the first half of 2020. Quite unfortunately, I think we're going to see, again, a decrease in life expectancy once we start looking at the entire year, because we do know that the hardest hit demographic and highest mortality rates have been in the older populations. I think we're going to have a lot of work to do in this country over the years ahead to try and make up the losses that we've seen with this pandemic. And that is going to be including an investment in our public health infrastructure and improving the health of the entire nation, and especially in improving the health of the ethnic and racial minorities that took the hardest hit.
Thank you, Dr. Walensky. I want to finish where we started, which is to thank everybody who is going to be working over this weekend to catch up from the weather-related events, to thank our partners in states and local vaccinators for extending their hours and increasing the access to folks to get their vaccines, and to assure people that if their vaccine because of the weather their second shot has been delayed for a short period of time. It is not a problem that will be accommodated completely. Thank you all, and I hope everybody has a nice weekend.
All right. So the big takeaways here, the diminished vaccination because of the weather will be made up for over the next 7 days. New federal sites. The vaccines with 2 doses appear to be, generally speaking, protective enough against the variants to limit severe disease. The question about preventing an infection altogether is an open question. They didn't comment about that. We still don't know that as far as that goes. And don't skip second doses, the big takeaways. Thanks to Angela Keeler for signing up on my website. Also, thanks for everybody who supported via Twitch, like Kieran Live and Astro Lycos, Capriani, T-Man, Dinah Kosper, and all sorts of other usernames that I will persistently mispronounce. That does it for me today. We'll be back very soon with many more things upcoming.